field trips. For many of us, they were the highlight of the school year, an escape from the classroom, a chance to make memories with friends, and sometimes a brush with the unexpected. But while most field trips are full of laughter and discovery, some hide eerie moments that stay with us forever. Today, we're diving into a chilling side of field trips you've probably never considered. The stories that students whisper to one another on the ride back, the experiences that even the chaperones can't explain, and the mysteries that linger long after the buses have pulled into the school parking lot. In this video, we'll explore 3 true and unsettling stories from school excursions that blur the line between the natural and the supernatural. These aren't just campfire tales, they're real accounts from people who lived through them. They'll make you question what might be lurking in the corners of those seemingly ordinary trips. So, turn off the lights, grab a blanket, and settle in. These are the stories you'll be thinking about the next time you step on a school bus or walk into an unfamiliar hotel. By the end, you'll see field trips in a whole new light, and you might even wonder what your old school trips were hiding. Ready? Let's start with the first story, a chilling encounter with a passenger who wasn't on the attendance list. Story 1. The mysterious passenger field trips usually start with excitement buzzing in the air. Students are laughing, swapping snacks, and talking about the day ahead. This was no different for a group of high schoolers heading out on a weekend retreat in a rural area. They were packed onto a bus, accompanied by their teachers and a driver who had been on countless similar trips. But this trip would be anything but ordinary. About 30 minutes into the journey, the atmosphere shifted. One of the students, sitting near the back, leaned over to their friend and asked, "Who's that sitting back there?" The friend frowned. "Who?" The curious student pointed toward the last row of seats. A man, older and wearing a faded grey coat, sat silently. He wasn't part of their group, that much was clear. None of the students recognized him, and the teachers were up at the front of the bus. "Probably someone's dad," the friend suggested with a shrug, but their explanation didn't sit right. As the bus traveled deeper into the countryside, more students began to notice the man. His expression never changed, and no one could recall seeing him bored. When the teacher did a head count during a bathroom stop, everyone froze. The number was correct. Every student was accounted for. "Wait," someone whispered. "Does that mean he's not with us?" Back on the bus, the tension grew. Some students tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind. Maybe it's just shadows or reflections. But others began whispering theories. What if he's a ghost? Or what if he's dangerous? Even the teachers, overhearing snippets of conversation, seemed uneasy. As the trip went on, the mysterious figure remained in the back row, silent and still. Even when the bus hit bumps or made sharp turns, he never shifted. The students who dared to glance back swore his gaze followed them, though his head never moved. The climax came late at night when the group was heading back to school. The driver stopped briefly at a rest area for a quick break. The teachers and students filed off, but no one saw the man leave. When the last student climbed back on, they glanced at the rear seat. He was gone. Panic set in as the group frantically searched the bus, shouting to the teachers and driver. They checked every seat, every corner, but there was no sign of the man. One brave student ran off the bus, scanning the dark rest area for any sign of movement, but it was completely deserted. Once the students returned home, the story spread quickly. Some insisted it was an overactive imagination, a simple misunderstanding. But those who had seen the man remained adamant. There was someone there who shouldn't have been. Even years later, the students from that trip can't explain what happened. Was it a mistake during the head count? A harmless hitchhiker who slipped on and off the bus unnoticed? Or was it something beyond explanation? The story ends with more questions than answers, but one thing is certain. Those students never forgot the chilling presence of the mysterious passenger. And with that unsettling thought lingering, we move on to our second story, one that takes place in a location many field trips visit: a hotel. Story 2. The hotel we should never have stayed in. Every field trip comes with its share of excitement, but there's always a moment of relief when the group arrives at their destination, especially after a long day of travel. For this group of middle school students and their chaperones, their destination was an old hotel in a small historic town. Its creaky floors and antique furniture gave it a vintage charm, but for some, it felt more eerie than inviting. The teachers handed out room assignments and the students rushed off to explore. At first, the kids were delighted. There were grand staircases to climb, enormous mirrors in the hallways, and windows that overlooked the quiet town square. But as night fell, the charm of the hotel began to fade. It started small, strange noises echoing through the hallways, even when no one else was around. One group of students reported hearing soft footsteps outside their door late at night, but when they opened it, the hallway was empty. "It's just an old building," one teacher reassured them. "Creaky floors, nothing to worry about." But as the night wore on, the occurrences became harder to ignore. A student from one of the top floor rooms swore they saw a figure standing outside their window. The problem? Their room was on the 3rd floor, and there was no balcony. The figure appeared to be a shadowy outline of a person, unmoving, just beyond the glass. Panic spread as word of the sightings got around. A pair of girls claimed they heard someone whispering their names in the middle of the night, but their roommates insisted they hadn't spoken. A chaperone walking back to their room after checking on the students caught a glimpse of what looked like a person disappearing around the corner. When they followed, there was no one there. The most chilling incident happened just before dawn. A loud, echoing bang woke several students and teachers. It came from the end of the 2nd floor hallway near a room that wasn't assigned to anyone. The teachers investigated but found the room locked tight. When they asked the front desk about it, the clerk looked puzzled. "That room's been closed for years," they said. "It's not safe to stay in." By the time the group left the next morning, no one could shake the feeling that they weren't alone in the hotel. Stories of ghostly figures, strange sounds, and unexplained phenomena swirled as the students piled onto the bus, desperate to leave. Years later, some of the former students still talk about that night. A few claim to have dug into the history of the hotel, finding mentions of mysterious deaths and supposed hauntings. Others try to laugh it off, chalking it up to overactive imaginations fueled by the creaky old building. But for those who stayed there, the memory of that night feels all too real. They still wonder what, or who, might have been sharing the halls with them. Our next story takes us outdoors, away from the confined halls of a hotel, and into the vast, unsettling unknown of the woods. Get ready for a tale of a field trip hike that took a turn no one could have predicted. Story 3. The Trail of the Disappearance. Field trips to nature are often a refreshing break from the routine. This time, a group of high school students and their teachers were on a hiking excursion through a dense, sprawling forest. The trail was well marked, the day was clear, and spirits were high as the group set off. Laughter echoed among the trees as they admired the scenery, snapping photos and joking about who would slip in the mud first. But deep in the woods, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter quieted as the trees grew thicker, their branches blocking out the sunlight. The forest seemed unnervingly silent, as if the group were intruding on a space that wasn't meant for them. That's when one of the students, Alex, wandered ahead. "Stay close," a teacher called, but Alex waved them off. Just a few steps ahead, they promised, to get a better view. Moments later, Alex disappeared. At first, no one was alarmed. "He's just around the bend," someone said. But as the group rounded the corner, there was no sign of him. The teachers began to shout his name, their voices echoing back eerily through the trees. The students huddled closer, their earlier excitement replaced by a growing unease. After 10 agonizing minutes, Alex emerged from the trees, looking disoriented and pale. "Where were you?" a teacher demanded, but Alex could only shake his head. I don't know," he murmured. His voice was shaky, and his eyes darted nervously, as if he expected something to follow him out of the woods. The The group decided to head back, abandoning the rest of the hike. But the return journey was anything but smooth. Strange noises began to follow them, soft whispers that seemed to come from all directions. Some students claimed they saw flickers of light darting between the trees, too bright to be fireflies, and too fast to be anything natural. Alex remained silent for most of the walk, but when someone asked him what happened, he finally spoke. "I don't remember much," he said, "but I thought I saw someone, a woman. She was waving at me like she wanted me to follow her." The teachers quickened their pace, urging the group to stay together. By the time they reached the trailhead, everyone was on edge. But the strangeness didn't stop there. When they returned to the school, Alex was called in to speak with the principal about the incident. His shoes, which had been clean when they left that morning, were now covered in a dark, sticky substance that no one could identify. He couldn't explain where it had come from or why it smelled faintly of something metallic. In the days that followed, Alex became withdrawn. Friends said he started avoiding the woods entirely, even the small park near his house. He would wake up in the middle of the night, claiming to hear whispers outside his window. Years later, the rest of the group still talks about that hike. Some believe Alex stumbled upon something supernatural, a presence tied to the forest that didn't want them there. Others think it was simply fear and imagination running wild in an unfamiliar place. But Alex has never shared much more about what he experienced or what he saw. And so, the tale of the hike ends, leaving behind more questions than answers. One thing is certain: the woods can hold secrets far deeper than we might ever understand. As we reflect on these unsettling stories, let's consider what makes them linger in our minds. That's exactly where we'll go next, into the reflections and lessons these tales leave behind. What is it about these stories that sticks with us? Maybe it's the mystery, the unanswered questions that creep into our minds late at night. Or maybe it's the reminder that even the most ordinary settings, a bus, a hotel, a hiking trail, can become the backdrop for something extraordinary and unsettling. Field trips are supposed to be predictable. They're designed to take students out of their daily routines, introduce them to new experiences, and bring them back home safely. But these stories challenge that assumption. They remind us that sometimes things don't go as planned. Take the mysterious passenger. Was it an oversight or something more otherworldly? And the hotel? What could explain the shadowy figures and locked doors? The hiking trail leaves us wondering, was Alex's encounter purely psychological, or was there truly something in the woods that day? Each of these stories taps into a universal feeling: the fear of the unknown. It's the same fear we feel when we hear footsteps behind us in an empty hallway, or when we catch a fleeting shadow out of the corner of our eye. These tales might be unique to those who experience them, but the emotions they evoke are familiar to us all. But beyond the fear, there's something else these stories offer: a connection. They remind us of the shared experiences of childhood and adolescence, the memories we carry from school trips, and the bonds we formed with our classmates. Whether it's laughter, fear, or both, those moments stick with us, shaping the stories we tell for years to come. Now it's your turn. Have you ever experienced something strange or unexplainable during a field trip? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And remember, the next time you step onto a bus, check into a hotel, or wander down a trail, pay attention to the small things. You never know when an ordinary day might take a turn into the extraordinary.